This is the story of John D. Rockefeller, the world's first billionaire. Rockefeller was born in Richford, New York, to a family of a few siblings, but mainly his mom and his dad. His dad was nicknamed Devil Bob since he would leave the family for months at a time to sell oils and remedies to people in need, none of which worked. John quickly adopted the role as the head of the household and took care of his mom and his few other siblings. Meanwhile, his dad became hated for assaulting a woman. The Rockefellers then moved to Cleveland, Ohio for a new life. Soon after, John got his very first job. John was a bookkeeper for a small company, and for the rest of his life, he celebrated this day as Job Day. In today's money, he was making $11,000 a year and was already giving 10% to charity. Because of the economic recession, John feared he would soon be laid off. So John started a new business with his partner, Maurice Clark. This was a food shipping business. He shipped things like fish, grain, meat. Soon after starting his business, the Civil War began. John paid $300 to have a substitute fight for him, and the economy began booming. After making a small fortune during the Civil War, the crude oil boom began. John and Clark had been doing very well with their produce business whenever a chemist, Samuel Andrews, approached them with a way to refine crude oil into kerosene. They gave him $4,000 as a startup investment and continued running their produce business. Soon after, the oil business began booming, and John and Maurice went all in. The issue was, oil was currently seen as a large gamble, meaning nobody wanted to invest in oil companies. The pressure was too much to handle for Maurice, and he decided to walk away with a nice check from John. John nervously started the company we know today as Standard Oil. The first notable business deal we see John make was one he made with a failing railroad company. This was the Erie Railroad Company, and all other refineries were purposely walking away from it. John decided that this was a good opportunity to give them his business at a large discounted rate. Because of this, John was now able to create his oil and ship it for even cheaper, which meant he could charge less and therefore undercut his competitors, gaining more market share. One large issue John ran into was the increased supply of oil. This meant that oil was plummeted down to $1.16 per barrel. In this time of crisis, we see John make his most notable business deal of his entire career. In exchange for only shipping using Pennsylvania Railroad agreed to pay 15 cents per barrel rebates back to John for every barrel shipped by his competitors. Other refineries couldn't compete with John, and very quickly Standard Oil began buying up all other oil refineries. Standard Oil began gaining market share and becoming a larger and larger monopoly that we know today. The price of oil plummeted as new oil was being found all over the U.S. All the way down to 80 cents, Standard Oil continued to buy up its competitors. Pennsylvania Railroad, the largest company at its time, began to compete with John directly by selling kerosene. By undercutting prices, John was able to defeat Pennsylvania Railroad, causing them to have a mass layoff, causing the world's largest, at the time, worker strike. Carnegie and Rockefeller were very close in net worth, and at the time, they began competing to see who would be the world's richest man. The invention of the light bulb threatened the kerosene markets, so John, who had previously only used horizontal integration with refineries, began vertical integration, buying up the mines, refineries as previously, but also the transportation, aka the railroads. John's plan worked flawlessly, and with the new invention of the gas car, John began making more money than ever. John was now stepping outside of his comfort zone and began doing things besides oil, like railroads and steel, directly competing with Andrew Carnegie. The king of Wall Street, J.P. Morgan, wanted to merge Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller's steel companies into one massive steel company. This happened, and it became the world's first billion-dollar company named U.S. Steel. However, John quickly became the target of Teddy Roosevelt, who said he would eliminate monopolies. John made papers for his manipulative business practices, and Standard Oil was sued by the U.S. government. Standard Oil was broken down into 34 companies. What was thought to hurt John actually became his biggest moneymaker, since he owned a quarter of every single company which was broken up. And he became the world's first billionaire whenever these companies went public on the stock exchange. After leaving the world of business, John decided to dedicate the rest of his life to philanthropy, and he became the world's largest philanthropist of all time, establishing the Rockefeller Foundation, which has given over $10 billion to those in need. John established colleges, gave money to medicine research, and gave money to those in poverty. John's legacy is remembered as someone who was extremely kind and caring, but also evil when it came to business practices. He's the largest philanthropist to ever live, but also one of the most ruthless businessmen. John lived till 1937, and this was his most famous quote: "Don't be afraid to give up the good to go for the great." John D. Rockefeller.